He took me to church with him at his ward, and of course I felt the daggers coming at me because he was a very sought after bachelor, I guess, in his ward. And I turned around and I saw a couple ladies like staring at me like, give me the evil eye. And I says, why are they looking at me like that? He goes, oh, you slayed the dragon. And I kind of laughed. I says, what? He goes, yeah, they've been after me for a couple of years. And yeah, he said, you slayed the dragon.
Love stories fill us with joy and inspire hope for the future. And a true life romance can remind us that sometimes just one spark is all it takes to change everything. Authors will tell you that real love stories don't just belong in books. They're lived one chapter at a time. Welcome to Unexpected Love Stories. I'm your host, Dawn Prushkowski, and today our storyteller is the multi-award-winning author, Diane Merrill Wigginton. Diane's an actual romance novelist. She's authored the acclaimed Compromising Position. She also penned the Jewel Dagger series, which is 3 books: Angela's Secret, Isabella's Heart, Olivia's Promise. And she's just recently published her first children's book, The Secret of One-Eyed Cogburn, the Dreaded Pirate Captain. And I just found out that her latest book, The Magician Killer, was just released this week. And you'll want to get it because it's a thriller seeking a serial killer. So we've got all these wonderful stories that Diane has penned. And though she's penned these great adventures, a lot of passion, a lot of romance, today she's going to share her greatest love story. So let's get ready for a sweeping tale of romance that Diane's going to tell us. Right, welcome there, Diane. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Oh, well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad to see you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you are a seasoned storyteller.
Yes.
So I just want you to go ahead and sweep us away. We're going to let you just open the door to how you and David met.
All right. Well, the way it happened was so amazing and so phenomenal that a lot of people don't believe this story, but I'm going to tell it to you. So my husband had been married before, and I had been married before. I had actually been divorced probably close to 10 years, and I had 2 children. They were elementary age, a daughter and a son. And Dave had 3 sons that were high school and college age. So I started going to church a lot more, and they had an adult singles program that I had just gotten involved in. I had just learned about it, and I thought, well, it's been long enough. I think I'm healed. I feel confident. I feel good about myself. I'm ready to go out there and see what happens. So I started going to conferences, and I'd gone to a couple, and they announced that they were going to have a New Year's Eve dance for the adults. And I thought, well, that would be interesting. So I was going to these programs with another lady, and I turned to her and I said, do you want to go to it? And she said, I'd love to. You want to go together? I'll meet you there. And I said, yeah, that sounds like fun. We drove our own cars, and I kind of just had this feeling that something was going to happen. I don't know why I had that weird feeling. I hadn't been to a singles dance yet. I had never been to one, and I didn't know what to expect. So New Year's Eve, I show up. She drives up. She parks next to me. We go in together. And before I knew it, this man walks over to me and he goes, would you like to dance? And I said, I'd love to. And so, we're dancing out there and we're talking, and he says, well, I've got some friends I want you to meet. Would you mind, coming back to our table, and we're over here? And I says, no, I'd love to. And so I went and I met all of his friends sitting there, and then he turned me over to this guy named Mike. And Mike started to dance with me, and he seemed a little shy. And so, I started a conversation with him, and so the dance was over, and we went back, and Dave took me out for another spin, and then he asked me. He says, I just lost my country western dancer partner, and he says, do you do line dances or country western dancing? I says, I love dancing. He goes, well, you know what? If you don't mind, I'd like to get your number and maybe we could go country western dancing. And I says, I'd love to. That would be great. And I didn't think anything of it because this man wasn't my type. He just wasn't the type I'd normally go out with. And so I didn't think anything of it. And before I left that night, um, Mike wanted my number as well. And I said, sure, call me and we'll talk. And so I went home and didn't think anything of it. And a few days later, Dave called me. Dave is the first man that came up to introduce himself to me. And long story short, so the backstory is Mike was the one who wanted to dance with me. He saw me first and he says, but he was too shy to come up and ask me. So Dave was going to make the introductions. And so, it didn't work out quite as well as Mike thought it was going to. And this was New Year's Eve, and this is a few days after. And so I, Dave called me up, and we started talking on the phone, and we talked for an hour. I mean, just talked, and it was easy, and it was wonderful. And I just thought, wow, there is more to him than I thought. And maybe I should give him another try, because I thought, wasn't my type. But talking to him stimulated my mind. And I'm like, this guy's got something going on. And so we went on a date, and he took me to seafood, and we sat and talked, and it was amazing. We just talked and talked and had a lot of things in common, and made another date to go country western dancing, and it spiraled from there. And then, of course, Mike called me a few days later, and I says, Mike, I wouldn't feel right about dating your friend and dating you at the same time. I'm just not that kind of girl. So I says, I'm going to have to back off on you and I going out. And he was very, understanding of that. And by the middle of January, Dave said he loved me first. And I pretty much felt the same way. Um, by February 13th, he proposed, and 5 weeks later, we were married.
Wow, that's quite. Oh, look at that.
Isn't he
That's so
gorgeous?
beautiful.
Yeah,
And
he's
so are
adorable.
you.
Anyway, so that was my grand love story, and it's never stopped. I mean, I am more in love with Dave today than I ever thought I could be. Just I, we're both retired now, and we have 11 grandchildren, and we are so blessed because we combined our families, and we had one more who came that year. We had a son, so now we had 5 sons and 1 daughter that we combined together, and life couldn't be more amazing. It's just been a roller coaster ride, and I can't say that every moment has been easy and there's never been a fight. I can't say that. But it's two people working together and with a common goal, and just loving one another for who we are, not expecting somebody to change for you or be different than what you want, just who they are. And I have to say that taking a chance on somebody who wasn't exactly what I had pictured is all right, because it really worked out. He's amazing. He has provided for his family. He has just bent over backwards to just make sure all my wants and my needs are taken care of, and everything he's ever promised to do for me, he has done.
Mm,
And
I love that.
it's just been a love story that, I mean, it's 27 years now. We had been together for 27 years, and I couldn't be happier.
That's amazing. Okay, so I'm just going to back up and hit some things here.
Okay.
So Dave was the wingman, is
Dave
what you're
was the
saying.
wingman.
For
Yes.
Mike.
He was the wingman, and he turned out to be the pilot.
So what was it that drew him to you since he was the wingman?
You know what?
Because it sounds like he called you before Mike did. So he jumped
He
on
did. And
that
my
train
husband's
first.
not, yeah, my husband's not a man that just goes after somebody because they're pretty,
Mhm.
and that's, he's never been one to go around demonstratively saying, "Oh, you're so beautiful and I'm so lucky." He's not that type. He he looks at what's in the heart and what's below the surface, and he says, when he a caveat, when he told me he loved me, he said, "I see you. I see your heart, and I
Mhm.
feel your heart, and it's beautiful." And that, nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever said that to me, because you know what? I will give you the shirt off my back if you need it. I am the person who will take care of everybody. I am the one who can be selfless at times, and sometimes it's to my detriment. And my husband sees that. He can see it in my face when I'm exhausted, or that, I need to be taken care of, and he will turn around and take care of me. And
Mhm.
I just, he's just selfless and kind and loving and gracious. And I am so fortunate that we found each other and that I am his wife.
And it sounds like that the timing was just perfect because you were saying that you were at the place where it's like, I'm healed. I guess I can go out there now
Yes,
and start looking around.
I was
But
ready.
at the same time, so were you looking for love, or would you just say you were open to something?
I was open to it. When I went through my divorce, I was so devastated by it because I never wanted to be divorced, that I, kind of closed off my heart, and I said, no one's ever going to be in control of me again. And I don't ever want to give myself so much to somebody that they could destroy me like that. But I think I was at the point where I was ready to open my heart once again. And he just happened to be at the right place at the right time. And he was just what the doctor ordered, somebody who would be kind and loving, and, wouldn't try to overthrow my will or my desires or my wants. Sometimes we joke and he'll say, "Hey, babe, I need you to do this." I'm like, "You're not the boss of me." you know, kind of one of those. And he'll go, I know. I'm just asking, please, could you? And so, you know, it's not like being in control or having somebody control you. So
Mhm. Okay, so how long did it take you to know that I think this is the one? I think I could spend my life with this person because things rolled pretty fast. It was New Year's Eve.
New Year's Eve to the end of January was, I knew, I knew that he was the one. And I have to say, February, I was praying a lot. I prayed, and I put it out there. And I said, Lord, if this is the man for me, I need a sign. I need to have affirmation. And I remember I was kneeling down in my bedroom and it was cold. February, right? I had turned off the heat and ready for bed, and my arms were cold, and I was sitting there going, okay, I wonder how long this is going to take because I'm really cold. And all of a sudden I got this burning feeling from the inside, from my stomach, and it spread to all of my appendages, and I was no longer cold, I was hot. And I said, good enough, that's it. That's the affirmation I needed, because that was the Holy Ghost speaking to me, telling me that's the man I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with. And you know, we were married civilly on a boat, on a paddle boat, this gorgeous paddle boat, March 20th. That was 5 weeks after he proposed. Friends and family gathered around, and it was an evening wedding. And on this paddle boat, they had the rows on each side, and then we had the candelabras and the flowers and the light lit candelabras, and the ceiling had a stained glass window. The whole ceiling was a stained glass window,
Mm.
and it was lit from behind. And it was just gorgeous. And we got married at sunset, so it was perfect. And my father walked me down the aisle, and my son was the ring bearer, and my daughter was the flower girl, and his son stood up with him at the wedding as his, alternates. And it was just an entire family fest, beautiful wedding. It was amazing. And
Mm.
I just, it was quite the party.
How do you know when you're falling in love? Join us for the Love Unexpected podcast. This true life romantic journey dives into the whirlwind story of how one woman's life miraculously transformed, leading her across the sea where she discovered the love she didn't expect. Listen now on your favorite podcast platform.
Back me up to his proposal. So he said at the end of January that he loved you.
Yes.
You know now you've laid out your fleece and you got your answer. This is the one. And then he proposed how much long later after
Um,
that?
he proposed like a few weeks later,
Mm.
about 4 weeks later.
Was it planned or was it spontaneous, or did he
Well,
just go like, "Will you marry me?" Or did he have the
no,
ring
it
and
was it was so beautiful. I'm LDS, and I was going to take my endowments out at the temple, and he wanted to go through with me. And so he bought my temple garments and all my temple clothes as my Valentine's gift. And we went to the temple on the 13th of February. It burned in my mind because the next day was Valentine's. And so we went through on the 13th. And when we were sitting in the celestial room, we were just sitting there, just holding hands. And he looked at me and he goes, I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and I love you. Would you marry me? And I said, with tears in my eyes, I would. I would love to spend the rest of my life with you. Um, and, no ring. He let me pick out my own ring. So that was fabulous. He had a friend who was a jeweler, and he came over with these stones that were, loose stones and these settings, and I got to pick out my own setting and my own stone, and it was just fabulous. It was, every girl's dream to go ahead and, you know, be in charge of that stuff, because sometimes, somebody gets you something, you're like, oh, okay. But no, this is exactly, and I got to design it. This
Oh,
is
beautiful.
this is the band he got me. He had custom made for me on our 16th wedding anniversary. So, yeah.
Okay, so this is all pretty whirlwind.
Yes.
It's only what's like a 6-week time period or
Yes.
so. And you are a yours, mine, and ours family.
Yes, we are.
So um, now, with all this happening so quickly, how do you tell this to your family?
Oh, um, you know, I just said I'm marrying this wonderful man, and everyone get on board because it's going down the road. So my mom was very supportive. She had met him. She liked him. Um, my father hadn't met him yet, but that's all right. My dad goes along with what I wanted. So um, it was, and I understand it was quick, and it was, he took me to church with him at his ward, and of course I felt the daggers coming at me because he was a very sought after bachelor, I guess, in his ward. And I turned around and I saw a couple ladies like staring at me like, give me the evil eye. And I says, why are they looking at me like that? He goes, oh, you slayed the dragon. And I kind of laughed. I says, what? He goes, yeah, they've been after me for a couple of years. And yeah, he said, you slayed the dragon. So,
Oh gosh. Okay, so how did his kids take it? Because his kids were older, right?
right.
And yours were
They're both
younger.
in high school. I think one was 14 and one was 16. And then David Jr. was away on a mission. So he wasn't even there for all of that. And he actually came. So another funny fact, we had a honeymoon baby. Yes. Yes. I came back pregnant from our honeymoon. Um, and in fact, I said to him, I'm not feeling so good. It was a week later after, we were home, and he goes, oh, you probably just got the flu. And I go, okay. And then another few days go by and I go, I don't think that's the flu. I think I'm pregnant. He goes, oh, no way. That can't happen. Cause I was 35. He was 12 years older than me. And he goes, no, we're not having any more children. And I go, well, I don't think it's up to you. I think if God sends you a little gift, he's going to send you a little gift and you're going to accept it. He goes, no, that's not going to happen. You're not pregnant. You're just got the flu. And so I said, okay. And then I went to the store and I got a pregnancy test, and I came back and I took the pregnancy test and I go, I'm pregnant. There you go. It's your fault. And he goes, oh, we didn't tell anyone for 3 months. In fact, when we went to the temple to get sealed 4 weeks after our wedding, we knew the secret that I was pregnant, but nobody else did. And so it was just kind of, we were kneeled across the altar from each other, and there's a particular part about, procreating and bringing more children into the world. And we kind of
And you said,
smiled at
we're
each
on it.
other because we were. And so it's just, yeah, so many fun, amazing things happen in our life. And um, just little things between us, and it's just all brought us closer. But when I put that baby boy in his arms, he was over the moon. And so
Mm,
um, our baby boy is in the Air Force right now, and so we're very proud of
that's
all of our
wonderful.
kids. They're all doing
That's
amazing.
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, so and you told us about your beautiful, beautiful wedding,
Yeah.
and your family was all involved in it.
Yes.
Mm. Well, friends, I just want to tell you right now that you need to see Diane and David's beautiful photos from their wedding day. And they've got several photos from beyond their wedding day. And you can find it at our website, unexpectedlovestories.com. The link to Diane's episode is in the show notes below. It'll take you right to her photos. and all of the information about her and all of the links about her. All right, so you did take a honeymoon because there's a honeymoon baby.
Yes, we took 3 days. We took a motorcycle. We took a motorcycle ride up to Idlewild, up into the mountains, and it was just really peaceful. And we would go hiking and just relax for 3 days, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful. So,
Okay, and then you came home and you started your marriage off with a full house.
oh well, here's the thing. He lived in Encinitas, and I lived in Spring Valley, and we had kids in school, and we didn't want to
For
pull the
those of
kids.
you who don't know, that's in San Diego. Okay,
Yes, in San
go
Diego. So
ahead.
we would spend as much time together, weekends, evenings. He would drive down, um, and when I put the kids down, we would, talk and be together. But for 3 months when we were married, we had to wait till the kids got out of school. And so I was
Mm.
still working and taking the kids to school and spending all our time together and our weekends and doing stuff. But then once the kids got out of school, then we packed everything up from my house and we all moved into his house. So picture this. We had three kids at the time that were all living in a 1,500 square foot home, upstairs, downstairs, small. So and then actually David was back, so that was four kids, and then the baby came because when David came home from school, um or David was home from his mission, and then a few weeks later the baby was born. And so he stayed home with the kids. Well, Dave took me to the hospital because my water broke at 4 a.m. And he
Oh my.
goes, well, we'll call you if we need you to bring the kids down. And so we called him and we said, you might as well get the kids up because this is going forward. We're having a baby today. Bring everyone down. And so David brings everyone with him, and they're all in the room while I'm going through labor. And of course I'd had my epidural by then, and then sent everyone out, and the baby came, and then everyone of course was meeting the new baby, and it was fabulous. And I might add, the older boys didn't like any of the names that we picked out. And so they had decided that Ethan was the name they wanted their baby brother to be. So his name is Ethan Merrill Wigginton.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that.
So the older boys named the baby. Mom and dad did not.
That made him really feel like a part of the family too, I would
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
That's really neat. So everyone adjusted to the new family life
Oh, yes. That
fairly
Christmas
easily.
was the most amazing Christmas. Uh, so all the kids, I remember at one point, all 5 kids were in Joel's room listening to music while he played his video games, and they were just talking and laughing. And they had the door shut. I could hear them all laughing together in there. And I had the baby, and so I would go up to bed, and they would all just do their own thing because I was exhausted. But it was amazing how well they got together, and they to this day care deeply for one another. And I'm just very fortunate that they all blended so beautifully.
Mm. So now, 27 years later,
Yes.
um, you have you have just watched your seasons and where you're going
Yes.
change
Yes.
and what you've been doing change. I love that you have a husband that completely supports you for following your dreams and following your
Yes.
heart.
Yes.
Because I know ever since you were a child, you've loved stories.
I've loved stories. I made up stories when I was a kid. I always wanted to be a writer. I wanted to have something in print that, was solid, was something that I did. And so
Hmm.
I just I never got that opportunity because um, my mom put the squash on it. She said, no, no, you need something like, you need to be a secretary, or you need to do something that will make money, that, you will be secure. And so um, I was a registered dental assistant for 16 years. And when I married Dave, um, I worked for 3 more months, and then I retired from that, and I raised the family. And then when we picked up everything and left San Diego and moved to Sacramento, we had a 5.5-acre ranch in Harold, California, which was 45 minutes from downtown Sacramento. So I started at a daycare so I could, be home with the kids and still work. And so I did that for 17 years. But near the end of that, it just kept bugging me that I wanted to write. And so I took a couple of courses on children's fiction and all that stuff. And I didn't do anything with it because I was so busy working 11-hour days, 5 days a week, and raising the family. And then I lost my brother and my father in 1 year. So 2011, my brother got sick in January, and he passed quickly, unexpectedly, which was heartbreaking and hard for me because he was my only brother, my only sibling. And then a few months later, my father called me. It was October, I think it was, of that 2011. He said, I have cancer. I just wanted to let you know I'm going to fight it, but I've got pancreatic cancer and stomach cancer. And so at that moment, I received this knowledge that he wasn't going to make it. I knew he wouldn't, he wasn't going to live very long. It was going to take him. And so we made a couple of visits down there to see my dad, because he lived in Riverside. And we drove from Sacramento to Riverside a couple of times to visit. But the last time, he was just not doing well, and he passed in December of that year. And that was I'm a religious person, and so I just couldn't make sense of it. It just didn't make any sense why I would lose these 2 very important people in my life in the same year. And so my husband, did his best to console me, and he saw how sad I was. But it was, grief is something that we all have to go through, and we all have to deal with it in our own way. And I thought I was dealing with it, and then all of a sudden I'd be driving in the car, and a song would come on, and I'd just be bawling like tears driving down the road, and I'd have to pull over because I was just bawling so hard. And so again, I was trying to make sense of this loss. And what came to me in a dream was, life is short. Why are you putting off your dreams when it could be taken away from you tomorrow? And you wouldn't have done the things that you know that you are supposed to do. And so I said, oh, this is going to be impossible. I'm working 11-hour days. When am I going to write? When would I have time to write? And so, I don't know, one day, a few months before I turned 50, it was probably 6 months before I turned 50, I sat down and started writing a book. It just some idea that came into my head. It was Angelina's Secret. I wanted it to be an epic love story with a lot of suspense, a lot of twists and turns, and, one of those where love prevails through everything. And so it took me 6 months to write this book. And I thought, well, what am I going to do with this now? I have no idea how to produce a book. What do you do next? And so I sent the manuscript to my girlfriend. If you ever follow any of my bios, Gigi has been my friend. We went through 3rd grade together, all the way through school. We have known each other since the 3rd grade. And she is such an honest person, and she is an avid reader. And if it was awful, she would just say, yeah, scrap it and do it again, or, give it another try, but that's not good enough. But she didn't. She, read it in a few days, and she calls me back up and she goes, that was a fabulous book. Amazing book. I wrote it. She said, I read it in 3 days. 3 days. And she was working. She goes, I read it in 3 days, and I want you to write another book. I says, but I didn't even produce this one yet. I just wrote that one. She goes, no, you have to write another book. And I says, oh, okay, but I have to produce this one first, and then I can write another book. She says, no, write another book. And so while I was figuring out how to produce that, I wrote another book. It took me another 6 months. I was writing. I was writing when children were sleeping. I was writing when my husband was asleep. I was writing. I would wake up at 2 a.m. and go to the table and start pounding on the keys because an idea would come to my head, and I would write it down. And my husband would come out and he goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm writing. Please go back to bed. I have a thought. You're going to ruin my thought. Go back to bed. Just go to bed. I'll be there in a minute." And so, I wrote these 2 books, and it took me 6 months each to write the books. And then I had them edited, and then I figured out how to produce them. And then my husband goes, you have 2 books in the series. You have to write a 3rd book. And then I did. And so he goes, yeah, there's no series unless it's 3 books. And so I wrote 3 books, and left it open for if I want to go back and write any more on that. But I was done writing all that, and I figured out how to produce books, and I figured out how to, I got my own label. This down here is Jewel Dagger Publishing. That's my own label.
Lovely.
And so, yeah, I made my own label. And so I produced under my own label, and it's just amazing to be able to have that creative outcry or output of something that is just plagued you so many years that you knew that you were meant to do that. And then I wrote Laura's story. Laura's story is my young adult historical fiction. It's a little easier reading. It's not so complicated. And it's just really emotional. And I poured my heart into that one. There was times that I was writing, I would just tap into that emotion of loss because I'd been through it and I understood it. And so there are some parts in this book that will still make me cry because it's just, I tapped into that part of me of loss. So then I thought, oh, I'm tired of history. I'm tired of having to take a notebook and do all this research. I think I'm just going to write a good old contemporary love story. So I wrote A Compromising Position. And this one has won 10 awards. And I am so proud of this book. It's just a beautiful love story between 2 people that shouldn't be together, but they are, and they worked. And I thought, oh, I totally get that. I totally get that. These 2 people don't look like they fit, but they do. They absolutely fit, and they work. And so, yeah, I'm really proud of that. And then I decided I was going to write something because I have 11 grandkids. And so I had written this story like a long time ago, like years and years ago, but I had never produced a children's book, and it's in English and Spanish. And
lovely.
Yeah. And so the illustrator right here, Nestor, he's fabulous. He did all of this artwork from hand, and all the artwork in these books.
Those are gorgeous.
Done by hand, and he colorized them all by hand. And I got I got to work with him on the pirate and the characters, and it was fabulous because I had an input in all of it. And I'm just so proud of that book, and I'm working on a sequel to the children's book.
Mm-hmm.
I have ideas that are going through. I have an outline. I just have to fuse it up and then send it on over, and he will do the rest. But yeah, this is the one I just put out, The Magician Killer. This one's a little darker, I have to say,
Uh-huh.
because it's two FBI agents. Um, they are hunting down a serial killer in Alaska, and the two FBI agents get entangled with the love story. So, of course, there's romance in there. There has to be romance. I'm sorry, there just has to. And I'll probably do a sequel to this eventually because I have some
Mm.
ideas, and it just cries for a sequel because those two agents and the four-legged dog, Officer Murphy is the canine. They just work so well together. I just think it's fabulous. But
Mm.
meanwhile, I am also working on another novel. And the working title is The Lion, the Blade, and a King. But there's a lot of suspense in that one and a lot of twists and
Mm.
turns. So I'm very
Well,
excited about that one.
I love that. I love too that you have a husband that sees who you are, who cherishes who you are, and supports your dreams, supports your passions, and basically allows you to have wings to fly
Yes,
and
yes,
do the things that you want to do. And how what a beautiful thing to not have given up before
yeah,
you met him.
yeah,
And just to know that something good is waiting if I just wait just a little bit
yes.
longer and
Just around the
go to
corner.
the dance. Just
Go
go
to
to the
the dance.
dance.
That's my takeaway for everyone. Just go to the dance.
Go
Just
to
do
the
it.
dance.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Something
Oh,
fabulous
well,
is going to happen.
it can.
And by the
Yes,
way, it was my first and only singles dance. I never went back.
because you weren't single much longer.
I wasn't single anymore.
Oh, Diane, thank you for sharing your beautiful love story. How can people who are so touched by your story find out more about you?
Well, I have given you, Dawn, all of my websites. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I have some personal websites. You can find my books on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Can order through Ingram. You can order through Books By. I have a web page on there that you can order my books directly. So I am everywhere at this point. Yeah, and there's I just did an article with Voyage New Yorker
Hmm.
uh, that came out in January, which tells my story in a one pager. So that's pretty exciting. And I was
Hmm.
just featured in Power Magazine. It's a magazine for women entrepreneurs. I'm really proud of that one that came out this month. That's their spring issue. So
Wow.
yeah,
God's just doing amazing things with you right now.
he really is. I'm just blessed beyond what I could have even dreamed. Um,
Mm.
Only place to go now is to turn these books into a movie or a series or
Okay.
something.
Now, friends, remember it's never too late for your love story to be written. If you enjoyed this story, please follow and subscribe to this podcast so that you don't miss a single exciting story. And please share this podcast with someone who loves a good love story. And remember, you can find out more about Diane at our website, as well as find a link to all of her books. That address is unexpectedlovestories.com. That link to Diane's episode is in the show notes. It'll take you exactly to her episode where you can find all that information. And I hope that your heart feels lighter and full of hope after hearing her story. You know, sometimes the best love stories are the ones we never saw coming. So get out there and dance and keep your heart open because love's waiting for you.